In this lesson, we will discuss how to create a RAM preview so that you can watch back your animation. Okay, so far we've created a simple animation for our piece of millions text, and I want to talk to you about how to preview your animation without just using this scrubbing thing that we've learned so far. So a RAM preview is how you watch back your animation in After Effects, and After Effects uses your computer's RAM to temporarily create a preview of what you've animated, and you can tell it to play back in actual real time. So that's what makes it a little bit different and a little bit more accurate than just doing the scrubbing that we've looked at so far. So how do we do a RAM preview? There's obviously keyboard shortcuts that we can use for it, but if we want to go in and fine-tune the preview a little bit more, we use this preview menu here. If you don't have that open, you can get to it by going to Window, and it's going to be this one kind of right down here, about 5 from the bottom. And actually, any of the panels that you maybe accidentally close that you want to come back, you can find through that Window menu there. So you see that I have some of these open from earlier when we were talking, but if I want to close any of those and bring them back, I can always just come to the Window menu. So I'm actually going to do that now. Let's just go ahead and close out a paragraph and effects and presets and character, just so we have a little bit more room for you to be able to see what's going on in that preview menu. Now, when you create a RAM preview, one of the things you want to keep in mind is that it does use up your computer's RAM. So it's going to slow things down, and really based on how complex the animation is that you've created, it can take a long time sometimes to create that RAM preview. So you don't want to preview any more frames than you really need to. So the way that you tell it how many frames you want it to preview is by this work area here. So this little thing that I'm dragging here is the work area, and you can use this when you're actually rendering out your project as well. But for just the RAM preview, I just want to watch this part right here, and I'm leaving just a few frames right there at the end so I can see that that hits and stops, so it's not just stopping on that last frame. I usually like to have a little bit of space there at the end. So instead of having this entire area previewing and wasting all that time, I'm just kind of dragging that back to this point right there. So that just makes that a little bit smaller. We're going to be previewing less frames now. So once you have your work area defined by dragging that or clipping those to the point that you want those to be, you're ready to set up your preview options. Now, just to begin a RAM preview with the default settings, you're just going to click this little button right here that says RAM preview. So I'm going to go ahead and click that now. And you see that because we have such a simple animation, that RAM preview was cached out really quickly. And you always can tell which frames have been cached out by this green line here. So if I didn't have the RAM preview cached out at all, if I hadn't been scrubbing, you would slowly see this green line creep up to the edge of that work area, and that's when the RAM preview would begin. And right now, my RAM preview is set to loop. So you can see that that's why it's going over and over again. And that button is just right there, right next to the RAM preview. So if I change this, it won't loop anymore. This is going to be the ping pong option. So now if I do this, it's going to play backwards and forwards, but it's also playing it in real time. So it's a little bit more accurate than scrubbing whenever you scrub backwards on your timeline to use that ping pong option. Now you can also just choose this button here to change to play it through once. So once it plays through once, it stops. So you may only want to watch it one time. I personally prefer that loop option just so I can watch it a few times and get a feel for what my animation really is looking like. So right now, my frame rate for my RAM preview is using my comp's default. That's why it's in parentheses and saying 24. But you could preview it back at a different frame rate if you wanted it to. So you have the option to choose those there. Now, well, as I was saying earlier, RAM previews can take a long time if you have a really complex animation. So you can also come in here and change the resolution of your RAM preview. So right now, this is just set to automatic, but I could change it to 1/4, and then we can hit that RAM preview button. And this is a little bit lower quality of a preview than what we were watching earlier. Now, we could also change it all the way back to full. And what we're actually seeing right now is not the RAM preview, it's just a still frame. And our still frame resolution is determined by this resolution right here. So right now that is at 1/2. So if we watch a full RAM preview, it's actually going to be a little bit better quality than what we're seeing here as this still frame. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that 0 key. And now that is at full resolution. Now, let's say your computer is running really slowly. We have a very complex animation we're trying to watch. You can even tell After Effects to skip frames. So let's say I want to preview this whole area here, from 0 to 2 seconds. And let's say my animation was very complex. I could come in here and tell it to skip every frame. So basically what that's saying is every other frame, it's going to skip a frame. So now, if I hit that RAM preview, we see that looks a little bit choppy. And that gives me just kind of a rough idea of my animation. So it's definitely a good way to just get a quick idea of something, but not really what you want to do whenever you're fine-tuning an animation. Now, that time you may have noticed that I didn't actually go up there and click the RAM preview button. I used a keyboard shortcut, and that is going to be the 0 key on your number pad. So just by hitting the 0 key on my number pad, I am beginning a RAM preview, and it's just using these options that I have set up here in the preview panel whenever I use that shortcut. So if I want to change that and come up there, hit the 0, so I'm not skipping any frames. And by using that keyboard shortcut, now I'm using those new settings. Now, the number pad is different from the numbers along the top of your keyboard. So you want to make sure that if you're using that keyboard shortcut, you're not getting frustrated by just typing that 0 key along the top of a keyboard that maybe doesn't have a number pad. So if you don't have a number pad, you can go in and change keyboard shortcuts in After Effects to be something that's a little bit more just geared towards whatever kind of keyboard that you have. So I like working with a full keyboard when I'm working in After Effects because there's a few keyboard shortcuts I use that don't come on a smaller keyboard. So just keep that in mind whenever you're working and just getting used to all the keyboard shortcuts that you'll begin using as you learn this program. So in this lesson, we learned how to set up our RAM preview options to view our animation.